Recording here, recording. All right, man.
This
Well,
meeting is
first
being
of all,
recorded.
welcome everybody. Bienvenido. Hola a todos. I'm still in Mexico mode because I had the best trip ever. It was fantastic. But before we talk any about that, Russ Parker, how you doing, man?
Doing good, moving along. Can't wait to get moving more. Recovering from a hip surgery, getting better little better each day. The hip was good. I had some issues with medications, which I talked about a little bit in the last show,
Yeah.
but a little bit of a nightmare there. But
Yeah,
otherwise,
nice job. Nice job on that last week too.
oh, thank you.
I was, let's see, where was I when I was watching? I was at Jess and Danny's house where I stay when I go to San Luis Potosi, Mexico. So I was watching as I could, but I was getting ready to go to the clinic to do more work with people. But I really enjoyed it. I watched the whole thing after you sent it to me. So that's great.
Good, I enjoyed it too. Always
Cool.
enjoy sharing.
Yeah, yeah. So today, today we have a special topic of Parkinson's and human movement, myths and facts. This is fun. We'll have fun with this because there's so much that is floating around out there. Although, you know, it's funny because I'm pretty sure that our phones listen to us because pretty much I was talking about this a couple days ago, this subject, or yesterday maybe. And all of a sudden, these different websites pop up and these different Instagram pages of Parkinson's myths and facts. So there's already some good information out there, which I'm very happy to see.
Yeah,
But
I was just thinking too about what is the source of our misinformation, and that's part of the problem too, because it kind of builds on itself. Some of it is just things that have been repeated over and over the years, and you don't know where it started. But some of it's in our own mind, because one thing I see is studies come out,
mhm.
and then there's the study itself, which, if you go into, shows the details, how the study was executed, what the goals were, and what the outcomes were. But then there's the articles about the studies. And that's where I think sometimes our disinformation comes from, because people start publishing articles that are kind of like leave your imagination open. Like, it says studies show this may help that, or and that kind of thing. And then people start reading into it. So there was one that came out recently that said yoga may be as good as for the brain as cardio. So and somebody posted it. It was it was a good article that showed all the benefits of yoga. And my comment on it was, there was no mention in there of that in the study. They didn't talk about Bdnf. So when you say good for the brain, there's a lot of different things that are good for the brain.
Yes.
There was no mention of Bdnf, which is cardio. We still consider the number one generator of Bdnf. So I just said, I don't want people to get the impression that now all of a sudden they could drop cardio because the yoga is going to replace that. You could do both, but I think sometimes it's in our own mind. Sometimes you see something, whether it's an article, and then you run with it, and it could be just information could be deceiving, or it could kind of make you think in a certain direction, which isn't 100% true.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because, I remember when I was a kid, actually, I had a couple of paper routes, and one of the gentlemen on my paper route, he had Parkinson's. But back then it was a myth about, I actually don't remember. But unfortunately back then he was looked at as, let's say, an outcast in society, that you want to stay away from him because maybe his behavior would not be appropriate, or he was violent or something like that, or he had no control over himself. Well, he did not have good control over movement. He had a lot of dyskinesia as well. But I got to know him pretty well. So early on, I think I was lucky to realize that what I say This sounds so ridiculous, but people with Parkinson's are people too. People with cancer and MS and anything are people too. No diagnosis defines us. And so it was back then I really started to realize there are many myths, and there still are. And in fact, our friend Kabugo Hannington is watching right now. And speaking of myths, first of all, welcome, Hannington. You, my friend, are awesome. He's doing such great things in Africa and
Superman
Uganda.
over there.
And some of those myths about Parkinson's being contagious, well, we know that's not true. So we want to help to educate. He's doing a great job of helping to educate about that. Or if you get into an argument with your mother-in-law, you get no, you're not going to get Parkinson's from that. You just might get tremors because you're really anxious. That's not Parkinson's. Maybe you're afraid. I don't know. That's a different kind of shaking. I want to throw one out there. It's heavy duty, man. It's a heavy one to start with. But I want, and I'm only going to say just a little bit, but I would love for you to speak to this, and then I can piggyback on it with some things about what I've seen out there. Myth: Parkinson's is a death sentence. No. My gosh. I have countless examples, and you do too, and you live with it, so you know. You're one of the examples, people fighting back. This is not a death sentence. My most recent examples are one that actually moved me to tears. Last Monday, a week ago today, I was at the clinic in San Luis Potosi, and this Sylvia, a lady, came in, lives with Parkinson's, a retired kindergarten teacher, an amazing lady, moves very well, better than I do. And that's not, I'm not just saying that, it's true. She moves better than I do. Her spirit is great. And then I found out, she did all this stuff. We did a lot with electroskip while I was there. In fact, it was all, I chose to make it an electroskip trip. And so we were watching and trying to get more data on how people move with music, how they move when they're creating the sounds with their feet or interacting with the sounds created by the tablet. Bottom line is, after she left, I found out she came by bus 6 hours one way for 1 hour with me. And we did have a workshop that night. It was 90 minutes, 6 hours each way. When I left, when she left, I couldn't believe it. I was actually in tears. Because that to me is commitment. That's fighting back.
Awesome.
You're a great example of fighting back. And so Parkinson's being a death sentence, I've seen this printed in various places as something that's not a fact, but just things that people believe. No, man. I mean, I know people with Parkinson's 30, 40 years, and they're still kicking my ass. What do you have to say about this, Russ?
Yeah, well, we have living examples, like you said. This is one of those things that is hard to die with some people. Like even in the medical community now, there's still this sequence of things that happens once a doctor diagnoses you, what he says to you, and he tells you what to expect, and that kind of gets things, rolling on the negative path. Sometimes if they're telling you, in 3 years, the medication is going to work for a while. In 3 years, you might start having problems. In 5 years, you might be struggling a little bit more with your movement. In 10 years, you'll be able to do a lot less of your daily tasks of living. In 20 years, you're going to be, severely disabled. I think you said it before about accept the prognosis, but not the diagnosis. I also think, though, being a very optimistic person, over the past 5 years, I've just been gung ho, and I still am, in fighting Parkinson's. But I've also taken notice of the people who have stepped up and spilled their guts and told, I've told the reality. There are bad things that could happen, but just use that, you just use that as information to prep yourself.
Sure.
It's still not a death sentence. People have gone through rough times where they've had severe problems moving, and they totally turn it around. There's a woman in the Parkinson's community who's run over 100 marathons, Rhonda Fowles.
Yeah. It's amazing.
But before that, before she had DBS, she was in rough shape, so it's amazing how. So there's always something, you just got to think of what your goal is, to always fight those Parkinson's, the progression of those symptoms, and just keep figuring out every day more and more what you could do. Just stay on track with that positive attitude. There's so many people out there who have turned things around. Now the big thing, for me, what I'd like to see is more people on board. There's so much proof that that exercise and diet could give you much more additional benefit than just the medication. That we need to get more people on board. And I'd like to state actually a problem with, and anybody listening, maybe you could help me out, but one of the problems I see is a good thing kind of ending up making things harder for the people who are struggling to start exercise. So we have so many people doing well now that almost works out as when you see on social media, all these people doing athletic things and all sorts of stuff, kind of get some of the beginners who haven't started on exercise, get some of them discouraged. And, the message I have for those people and also for people who are posting things about exercises, if you haven't started exercise, understand that everybody had a starting point. A lot of the people you're seeing videos of who are moving well, just think, that could be you. If you were never an athlete and they're doing like some amazing, acrobatics and things like that. Yeah, of course, that realistic, you may never get to that, but you don't need to get to that. To reduce Parkinson's symptoms, there's a lot of the exercise that you need to do may not be the things you're seeing on social media. So that's for those people. And then also for the people who, and we're all guilty of this sometimes, we show some cool exercises and somebody who's had Parkinson's a while and has been in an exercise program is performing them, and we demonstrate it. And, for the people, I guess, who, we have to be mindful, I guess, of showing ways that people could progress into something as well, the people who are demonstrating or sharing their videos and things like that. And I've seen good examples of that. People are mindful of that, but it's just something that maybe we could all work together to try to help those people who are struggling to even start exercising to rise up. And that's why I like that exercise snacking topic too, because if I could present things that are kind of simple, part of daily tasks of living, just to get people moving, to understand that just, some of the general tasks, getting up and down from your chair and doing things like that, could be incorporated, as exercise to start and kind of bring people, into the exercise fold that way. Anything you could do, So that's my long ramble on that. But just that it's not a death sentence. There's a lot of things you could do.
Yeah, it's and I'm just getting back to the feature. I was sharing our thing on various pages so we can maybe reach more people. And my friend in Bolivia, Karina. Hola, Karina. Bienvenido. Nice to have you with us. She's on Zoom with us, and we have. Please forgive me if I pronounce your name improperly. Essen Amodia, I believe, in Switzerland. Kubugo, and we have others, and I can't see who they are. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to ever make light of anything and diminish anyone's feelings or challenges, because I don't know what it's like to have Parkinson's, but you said it. We have plenty of living, breathing examples like yourself out there doing stuff, fighting back, for some people, in fact, I have a friend in Alabama, John Carmichael. Oh, thank you, SN. Very nice to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. He didn't really work out or do anything too much until he got his diagnosis, and then he turned into a beast. I mean, this guy's doing all kinds of amazing things, triathlons. I mean, things that I've never done before. Sometimes it's interesting. Well, I mean, I'll just say real quick. When I had my blood clots, which is 2 years ago, May 30th, landed in the hospital in Singapore. I mean, yeah, I was busy and I was doing stuff and working out and exercising. I'd lost a lot of weight over the years, but I stepped up the game because, I didn't want to die. I mean, I know, right? Sounds a little bit extreme, but it's actually true. In my case, so I can relate in one respect to certain people and stepping up the game or getting going. But a death sentence? No, man. Some people are doing amazing things like yourself, setting examples, leading the way, and the exercise snacking is just great. It's such a great concept for turning daily activities into or daily chores into exercise. Actually, Russ, I share this with a lot of the people who I work with, and I always talk about you. Say, you got to read in my book. You got to read chapter 8. Read what Russ wrote, and do stuff.
Yeah,
do the stuff. Do that stuff. If you're not going to do an actual formal, as we know, workout, do that stuff.
Yeah, I noticed there's more things like that coming out. There was a good video on getting up and down from a chair that somebody posted like a lot of details on, and I've seen things like that. People are adding more of this like daily task type of stuff into their video library of exercise and so forth. So that's good. That kind of stuff is catching on as well.
So I'm going to just throw out one more myth for now and then more later, and then I'll bounce it to you for one of your myths or truths. Everyone with Parkinson's gets a tremor. Jumbler. That's a myth. It's not true. While it is very common, I don't know about you, but I know people personally with Parkinson's, they've never had a tremor. So I just want people to know that.
Very minor for me.
Yeah, not everyone who has a tremor has Parkinson's. Could be essential tremors, because it be positional dystonia. I actually have positional dystonia. It comes from years of drumming, and I probably don't have it today. I just know my body, but there are times when I'll take a glass, and when I get to the midway to it's that. Today, no tango tambor. But that's called positional dystonia. There's also, so many other things that can cause a tremor. So that's some myths we want to dispel.
Yeah, I have very little tremor. I had a little bit in the beginning, and it got triggered once by some stress. I really haven't seen much of it. Every now and then I might notice a little something in my leg. So it would only show up in the left side. But I'm bradykinesia and rigidity dominant. So, and those things those things could be rough. I mean, all the physical symptoms in their own way could be hard. I know that the rigidity is you could be really rigid. And
Sure.
Everything feels like it's just tightening up, and you're just like a big stiff board.
What's on your list of myths and facts?
There was one about I wanted to talk about strength training and like just general exercise related to bradykinesia and rigidity, which kind of tie into are associated with kind of like slow movement. So I I think a myth, and I don't know if people have thought of this, but that there's no relationship between um, exercises that you do that have slow movement and helping things with slow movement. It's not, one of the things people think about is to counteract slow movement, you always have to do something fast. So I guess my point is there's still benefits to doing slow movement like eccentric contraction, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, and Tai Chi, which is like slow movement. There's something called Alexander technique, which also, and Feldenkrais, I think it's called, something like that. That all has slow movement as well. But there's and if you break down an exercise, usually there's the what's called the concentric phase, which is the where you're actually pushing the load or pulling it or whatever, where you're actually moving it. And I'm talking about traditional strength training. And then there's eccentric when you're returning to the starting position before you do the push or pull. So the eccentric would be if you're doing a lat pull, you're pulling down and then you're letting it back up slowly. That's the eccentric. So your muscles are resisting from that force, pulling you back. Same thing with the squat, as you're letting yourself down, that's the eccentric, or people call it the negative, and you're exploding back up.
Right.
So that's the eccentric movement. They tell you a lot of times to do. There's benefits to doing that slowly, and it's good for stabilization. But also, there is some benefit if you go slowly and you have a pause right before you come back up to fast movement, because you have what's called the eccentric phase, and before you're about to explode back up into the fast movement, you actually pause for a second, and you're resisting. For instance, in a squat, you're resisting yourself from going down more. So if those muscles aren't strong, the ones that stop you, for instance, in a squat, gravity's taking you down. If you don't have those muscles that help you yourself down, you're not going to get as good explosion back up. So you can, so the myth there is that there's no benefit to that if you're moving slow, but I think there could be very, very good benefit to those kind of slow moves. And it also teaches you muscle control. So if you're moving and being more in touch with your core. So if you're moving real fast, like you're swinging a baseball bat or whatever, and you're not mindfully thinking about first engaging your core and let your core and torso help that movement, and you're just swinging your arms. If you're not conscious of that, then you're not going to get the most power. So again, like you could train yourself to do twisting core exercises and do them slowly, and then you'll be mindfully learning how to engage your core. There should be a whole sequencing of muscle contractions to give you, to generate the most force, and to do it, in a coordinated fashion. That's kind of like that was kind of like an exercise kind of myth. Doesn't have anything to do with. Well, it does have a little bit to do with Parkinson's, because they talked about the bradykinesia. But
what I see a lot, especially this year, and I don't know if it's because it's post-pandemic. Well, not that we're out of it yet, but let's say post-vaccine for a lot of the people I work with. Everyone's had the vaccine, but I saw it before pandemic too. Is just generalized weakness, and it usually comes from lack of exercise, lack of movement, or diminished movement, let's say, compared to what people were doing prior to diagnosis or not feeling right. And I'm going to put myself out there and say, I'm careful about this, but I think I'm pretty safe in saying that if falls, first of all, falls are number one concern statistically for people with Parkinson's, because of the complications that can occur from a fall, potentially, and the mortality rate from falls, or complications from a fall. Then the balance is generally involved in the fall, or lack of control. And here's where I put myself out there and say, you're not going to have good balance if you don't have good strength. Your balance will be as good as, and this is not a good way of saying it, so just forgive me for my bad words, but my bad analogy. Your balance is only as good as your level of strength. How are you going to have good balance if you don't have strength? Now, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Of course, there are people who just seem to have great balance and maybe they're not that strong. However, if they get stronger, they can exercise, just like you were saying, more control,
Mm-hmm.
which could go in also and combine and bring into it the mindfulness aspect of things. So not only physical control, but mental control about what you're doing physically, including, well, whether it's a slow eccentric rep followed by more of an explosion concentrically, or just the overall form of the movement in the exercise, or the form of walking, steps, stride symmetry, stride length, rotations, whatever. This is all like really complicated, but it all comes in together that what I see is when people get stronger, their balance improves. Of course, maybe that would explain the first phase of training modalities in certain curriculums. Like, I'll just use Brookbush for our dear friend Brent, one of my best friends in the whole world, a fellow jazz musician.
There's a book.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad, because I want to talk about that book today.
Okay.
That's a really good book. I have it in an e-book form. But I wish I need to get the hard copy because I like the physical feel of a book, which is besides the point. That dispels, what, almost 100 myths about...
Yeah, this is the book we're talking about. It's called Fitness or Fiction by Brent Brookbush, good friend of Karl's and my friend too. And Brent was the first fitness guru that I ever followed after I got my certification. He knows a lot of stuff about human movement.
Yeah, he also offers a personal training certification now. So I steer everybody there because I taught for him for 3 years and I never learned more than I did from Brent ever about movement, biomechanics, anatomy. And that book is it. And his program is like the steroids version of some other stuff that's out there that's also really good, but his just is the best. Go to BrentBrookbush.com, just how it sounds, BrentBrookbush.com. $20 a month, I think. The Institute. If you finish everything in 6 months, you spend $120 for a certification, right? I mean, plus you can learn so much more. A lot of continuing ed for PTs on there, personal trainers, physiotherapists. But it's interesting, this whole strength and balance thing. When people get stronger, they tend to have better balance. So it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's that whole glute strength thing and instability. A lot of instability and balance is just due to glute strength. But back to that control thing, I'm thinking of one particular thing you do a lot, Karl, that I think kind of fits this category where you kind of mindfully learn how to control your legs. At any point in time, like for instance, walking is really, there's really like a single leg is working at a time, and and it alternates. But you do that thing where you use like those low hurdles, those triangular hurdles, and the person has to step over slowly, and sometimes you combine it with a cognitive thing. But that takes a lot of control. Just step over something slowly like that, and then do the next step and the next one. It works your core a little bit, but it also mindfully helps you focus, on the movement, doing it carefully and everything. So that's a good thing.
I don't know where that came from. I have no idea where I came up with that. I bought a package of Stroop stuff years ago from oh my gosh, I can't believe Sean Harker is the inventor of all that stuff pretty much, and he owns the Stroop's company, and we're friends. And I don't know, I bought a package that had hurdles and elastic bands and some other stuff, and I really like them. I like them because, I don't know, I just like them. You could use anything for hurdles that you feel is appropriate. They're about 5.5 inches in height, and for most people they work pretty well. We can try different things. And I combine stuff too, like, you know, the reactor training lights, step over a hurdle, step on a light, play catch, spell words, do math, all at the same time. So it's like 4 things at once. It's a lot of fun. So let's see. I'm going to go to my next myth. My next myth is, and by the way, if anyone has questions or comments, we have Karina here on Zoom. Tenga preguntas, escríbeme in the chat box. I'll practicar mi español. Well, I had some myths in here, and apparently they all went away. So I'm going to go back to where I texted you last night.
Yeah, I have
another one that I have, I think is interesting. Aside from medications, there isn't much you can do. Well, we know that one's not true. We kind of already sort of talked about it.
Right.
Not directly tied to medications, but, well, I mean, I'll just say this. I'll just give one example. Por ejemplo, when you do cardio, or let's say when you raise your heart rate, elevate the heart rate, brain produces brain-derived neurotrophic factor that helps to preserve cellular structure of the brains and slow down or maybe prevent death of dying brain cells, which we know is happening, right? Probably happening to all of us and somewhere in our brain, so it's good for all of us. But it also helps to increase the uptake of medications, get medications in the body faster, and keep them in the system for longer, so there's more of a long-lasting effect. I'll just use that as an example of something that when you look at medication and exercise together, well, there's a great example of both working together. But we know there's a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, you know, and there's also the all the breathing and relaxation techniques, because, you know, it's a big part of fighting Parkinson's is the whole dopamine thing. So not only do you want to do things that help synthesize dopamine, whether it's exercise or how you time your medication, or you know, just positive feel-good things that bring your dopamine level up. You know, like listening to music and dancing and fun things like that, things that you enjoy. That even accomplishing some daily tasks, you know, on your ticking off some tasks on your to-do list, that could actually help boost your dopamine, that feeling of accomplishment. So you have to put everything all together. It's all cumulative.
By the way, I'm interrupting again. I also meant to say that if you have any comments, anybody, put them in the comments in Facebook. Any questions, put them there. Karina, tiene preguntas, escribe in the chat box, and we will answer them to the best of our ability.
Yeah, there's so many things you could do, and I have some, I could tie into this, like when we talked about before this call, you know, when we came up with this idea, we kind of just said that we'll just kind of roam into different topics. But one thing that makes me think about when you say there's more you can do, then the question is, what are the myths or misconceptions that people have on doing these proactive type of things like exercise and diet outside of you know, just the medication? There's some things tied with that. If you want me to bring them up now.
Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the things is diets and dietary changes and supplements. Certain supplements could help your Parkinson's symptoms. And that's a true. That's not a myth. But one of the myths is that people have sometimes is that supplements and even food are always safe and don't interact with medication because they're natural, so they're always safe. And that's not necessarily a good assumption to make. Even food could possibly have interactions with medication or with other supplements, or just with a condition you might have, or might counteract something that you're trying to accomplish and do, and it might kind of undo it. Um, so I encountered this recently with my hip surgery. But there's interactions with supplements, between medications, because supplements do some of the things, for instance, like blood thinning. Um, the doctors made sure they saw my supplement list, and they took anything in there that had to do with blood thinning, or kind of, and almost anything cardio related. If they felt it was something I could do without for a while, they told me don't take those supplements. Um, but also people think they're as far as dosing, um, that more is better. So you have to look at what high doses of certain supplements you take. What are the impact of that is. Some of it could just be straight out symptoms. Some of it could affect your absorption of other nutrients. So say if you're running if you're running elevated iron, which could happen to some people with Parkinson's, I was, and you're mega dosing on vitamin C, and you're also still a meat eater, which has high in iron and is a very absorbable form of iron. If you're mega dosing on vitamin C, that might be bumping up. That helps you absorb iron better, vitamin C. So if you're mega dosing on vitamin C, you might, and that high iron is really a problem, you might be bumping up your iron absorption even more. So I mean, that's just one example. And then there's contraindications with the medications, and you can find a lot of this stuff on WebMD. There's various sources. There's a PaySiteExamine.com that talks about different supplements and things like that. But you shouldn't always, when you go it on your own, that still doesn't mean you shouldn't be diligent about making sure that when you find something that you think is going to be good for you, that you don't also you have to check the cautions and the downsides and the risks and the interactions with things you're doing already. So I think that's a myth that some people really don't take seriously, and they should. There's certain vitamins that build up in your system. There's some that just flush out through your kidneys, and you can take a lot of them. One misconception is that all B vitamins are water soluble, so they're harmless. A lot of them are, like B12. You could take, I don't know, like 2,000 your daily RDA, and I think it still probably won't hurt you. But I think B6 and niacin, niacin, you get this flushing issue, and there could be some other issues. And B6 could actually, if you take high enough dose of it, you can end up with some neurological problems if you mega dose with that. I think B1 vitamin is another one of those that you could take like unlimited. I'm not going to go into the details of nutrition and supplements now, but I'm just saying that's something you got to check.
It is important. It is all relevant and important because certain things can be toxic. By the way, we have several people watching. Pato Galina, ¿cómo está mi amigo? I met Pato. He's part of the Galina family, Familia Galina, and San Luis Potosi. Such an amazing family. I love all of them. Julia is here. Laura, our dear friend Laura is here. Let's see what else. SN Kabugo, and we had other people, but I can't get up that far. So welcome everybody. If you have any questions, comments, please comment. Laura says exercise has so many benefits. Well, yeah, absolutely. And she's another great example. Somebody who's just on fire, man, knocking down barriers.
I have another one on that, on exercise.
Yeah. Oh, before you do though, I'd like to also just talk about a book I just read. It's now my new favorite book about food. It's brand new from one of my very favorite authors, Dr. Robert Lustig. It's called Metabolical. It just came out maybe a week ago. Metabolical. He also wrote another of my very favorite books called The Hacking of the American Mind. He also wrote another one called I don't remember, but it's worth it, man. If you have Scribed, it's an app. Actually, it's an app that's like $10 a month or maybe 12. And I have Scribed and I have Audible. Scribed is SCRIBD. You get anything they have on Scribed for one monthly cost. So what it costs to do that costs less than buying one book on Audible, even if you buy, credits. It's on Scribed in audio format. So that's where I listen to it basically. It's a great app, saves a lot of money. So back to Facebook, back to stuff. Welcome everybody. It talks about foods. It talks about toxicity in the general food. Let's say general processed foods. It also talks about what you just said. Not everything that has the word natural on the box or the package is actually all that natural, and it doesn't mean that it's not processed to some degree. And it's a really eye-opening book, more than anything I've ever read about food and what we put into our body. So it applies to all people. Just wanted to mention that. What you got, man?
Well, I just wanted to just add on to what we were just talking about with the food and doing things on your own. A lot of reason people do better sometimes is because they do these extra things, and they get information from wherever they get it from, and they're doing more exercise and diet and that kind of thing, and their doctor's not involved. That doesn't mean your doctor does not have value, and you should always share this information with them. Just remember, and then also there are, like, if you do natural stuff, there are naturopathic doctors. So I go to a general practitioner, but I also have a naturopathic doctor. So some people even think, well, there's certain things that I could do on my own, natural stuff, and even not even share with a naturopathic doctor. You should really try to share everything you're doing, supplements and diet and everything, with them, because you have to remember, although you're getting this information and maybe it's being confirmed that it's helping a bunch of your friends in social media and that type of thing, so you're hearing a bunch of information from a bunch of people. But remember, doctors see a bunch of people every day for years and years. So they have the experience of knowing, there might be certain things you're doing that they have experience with many clients, and they could tell you, they might be able to tell you some pitfalls that you don't know about. They're practicing, working with people with Parkinson's, so they're making observations that you may never see. So there's still a lot of value, with the doctors in that way. And then again, with also all the things you're doing, they might have additional ideas to add to it and precautions. But the other thing, the other myth that I wanted to talk about was, when people say that the exercise that you like to do is the best exercise. And that kind of statement, I'll call that a myth, because partial myth, I guess I'll call it, because it's kind of incomplete and falls short. And the answer to that is kind of, when it's coming out, what's going to come out of my mouth sounds kind of harsh, but that's true, that it's better to do some exercise as opposed to none. But my harsh truth is that doesn't cut it with PD. PD is a relentless disease. It's a progressive disease with currently no cure for it, chronic disease. You have to do at least enough to meet the goal of slowing progression of symptoms, or just making your quality of life better. Otherwise, there's not much point. You're not going to get much out of it. So my father, who lived to 89, almost lived to 90. His main two things was he did, he went for a lot of walks and he did gardening. And his diet wasn't that great, although it got, when he had started having his first heart problems, his diet got a lot better. And my mom watched it a lot. That was enough for him. But he didn't have, outside of some cardiovascular disease, which he developed late at life. So it wasn't maybe that aggressive. Outside of that, he didn't have a major chronic disease like people with Parkinson's have. That was good enough for him. But that doesn't mean you can't start out that way though. I think actually that's a good idea to start out with something you like, and maybe maybe you're not doing it, or maybe you're not working 30 minutes a day exercise, but it's a good way to get started. So it's a start. But
Yes.
as I said, it's long term. That's a myth. That's the best exercise to do when you talk about it, at least in the terms of PD. There's a certain amount you need to do to overcome the symptoms or improve your quality of life. So you need to there's some things you need to consistently do every day. And one thing, I don't know if I could tie this to a myth or not. One thing I've been saying a lot is work on, leverage your strengths and work on your weaknesses. So what happens sometimes with PD is the work on your weaknesses part. People kind of approach that not in the optimal way, in being that they identify the weaknesses as what they see now. That you want to go for the low hanging fruit. So yes, those are the things what you can't do now if you're having gait problems and balance. You want to address them right now, but you also want to be educated on the different problems that are very common as Parkinson's progress. So if Parkinson's disease progresses, there's certain daily tasks of living that are both important to you and that are common symptoms. Things happen to those types of movements that are common in Parkinson's. So walking is one of them. So when I say leverage your strengths and work on your weaknesses, when you first diagnosed with Parkinson's, you might have a little tremor and a balance problem, but your walking is great. I would have to shout this from the rooftops. If your walking is great, yes, add the priority to those things that you're having problems with. But walking, that is like something that we all do that's so important to us. If you're walking good, you start walking now, no matter what, whether it's bad or good. If you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, walking or cardio, whatever, but do that, walk and never stop. Do it consistently, do it a lot, because now you're preemptively keeping your walking gait, keeping that skill honed. So that's an important part to the approach that a lot of people don't always look at. That's not a problem now. I'll wait till I start developing that problem. Same thing with the daily tasks of living. If you start getting, feeling like a little weak, getting up from a chair, and you say, well, I was always like a little bit like that. I was never that strong. That's another, one that, people might eventually lose. So maybe you want to do a little bit extra of that. I could go on with a bunch of examples, but.
Well, I'm very glad you mentioned walking, because I just happen to have in my hand a couple books I want to talk about relative to Bdnf, that protein, that hormone that's produced by elevation of the heart rate. So we know that Bdnf helps to maintain cellular structure in the brain, helps to slow down, maybe prevent the rate of brain cells that will die in the brain. And there's also research that shows that Bdnf consistently created can help to grow new brain cells only in two parts of the brain, the hippocampus and the olfactory bulb. So for like hippocampus memory and other things, which is affected more so in Alzheimer's, but still hippocampus and olfactory bulbs. So some people with Parkinson's, who I know, particularly in Mexico, we were tracking 9 people 3 years ago, all 9 regained some degree or from medium to a lot of sense of smell because they had insoles in their shoes and they started moving. So I don't want to go down the whole barefoot stimulation path. All I want to say is that after 3 months, 7 people had a much improved sense of smell. After 6 months, all 9 people. It took a little longer for the other 2. But
Yeah, maybe we should do a session one day on all the barefoot stuff, because yeah, I had some
that's a good
stuff written
idea.
down on that too, and I'm thinking the same thing you just said. I don't know that I want to go down that path because you start on it, and there's so many great things about
That's
it.
another hour or a day in itself. But here's the point, though. The point is this: there's right near you at Stony Brook, Dr. Lisa Moratori. Her research shows minimum 20 minutes of cardio per day, every day, every day, is enough. At the cardio. Okay, let me start over again. 20 minutes per day. Cardio. The equivalent of walking as fast as you can. That's going to vary for everybody. For 20 minutes, but 30, she'll say 30 minutes is way better.
Mm-hmm.
The 20-minute minimum or more, 30, 40, an hour a day, whatever you can do, is if you can do that. If you can't, we can talk in another session about what to do to build up to it. And if you can't walk, well, there are other things we can do too. But besides the point, let's say you can walk. Let's just assume you can. 20 minutes per day, 30 is better. More is always, well, it's better to a point. And that's what we need to do, the walking. So I'm tying this in with walking because we know that walking briskly for 20 minutes minimum, that will create BDNF. I'm tying this into a couple things. We already know some of this stuff, but it seems like every week there's a new study coming out from somewhere reputable talking about benefits of walking. Caminar, walk. Todos los días. 20 minutos at least or more. 20 minutes at least or more. And this book is a great example, okay? Spark, written by Dr. John Rady. He's posting stuff all the time that isn't even his research, although he's done a lot of research, that talks about keep moving. All people keep moving, because if let's say you're genetically predisposed to something like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. I am. We have Alzheimer's in the family, the APOE4 gene. And how many copies do I have? I don't know yet. But the more you have, the more likely you are to get it. I'll find out soon. Bottom line is, Bdnf can help to slow disease progression by preserving brain cell structure, preventing brain cell death, or prolonging, the life of a brain cell. Walking is one of the things. I mean, Dr. Emily talks about walking as our most functional movement every day for most people. You want to walk well. You want to walk every day. You want to preserve cellular structure in the brain. This is a great book, John Rady. The other one he writes a lot about, including benefits of barefoot stimulation and being outdoors, and benefits of outdoors for the brain stimulation, brain activity, and the immune system, is Go Wild. It's a great book. So I guess that's my really long-winded way of saying walk every day.
And make it challenging. You have to
do something. But if walking is something you do, well, if you're able to walk and you walk to do things, then keep walking. I think it's a great exercise to do. Yeah. I don't run anymore very much because I'm having hip pain in both hips, but that's another story. But power walking, I'll do that.
Power walking is great. If you really push yourself, you could feel like you're pushing yourself just as hard as running. If you're like walking so fast, like you're walking just as fast as you can, like you're trying to keep up, with someone, just slightly faster than you. That's, what they call like forced exercise. And that's what's really going to generate the BDNF. And I think you need to get to that point, because I think it is there's some relationship to the, kind of like the fight or flight type of, it's similar to like the fight or flight type of reaction that happens in your body. If you push yourself to challenge yourself so hard, that kind of kicks in. And that kind of ties into stories of like people who have Parkinson's. They hit an emergency where somebody's hurt, or they have to run and help a person or something like that. And you hear these stories about people who have Parkinson's who couldn't even run and didn't have a good walk. But then all of a sudden somebody in their family is stuck and needs to be rescued or something like that, and they ran, because those endorphins kicked in. So you could kind of like simulate that same kind of thing with this walking as fast as you can, or whatever you're doing, cycling so hard, that you could barely keep up. I had one kind of it's a fitness myth, but again, it ties into Parkinson's as well. That's the no pain, no gain myth. So there's a couple of things that go along with that. There's fatigue, recovery, and all that. But there's a lot of fighters out there. We use the word fighters. So I would just say that it's good to be one of those people who really just puts the pedal to the metal, but train hard, but also train smart. So recovery is very important. In addition to not training so hard that you hurt yourself, another way to hurt yourself too is to think of the no pain, no gain thing, that you have to go hard 7 days a week. You should exercise, do some sort of exercise and movement 7 days a week, but you need a chance, depending on what you're doing, you need a chance to rest and recover, because you're not going to get the adaptation of growth, whether it's strength you're working on or cardio, if you're pushing your body so hard to a level where it's stressed and it's reacting to that stress. So perfect example I use is runners, because runners are I'm one myself. They're a strange breed. They get really bummed out if they can't run. There's a lot of people who run every day.
Yeah.
And what I always say to them is, say you're running, so somebody says, oh, well, I run 6 days a week, but I do have an easy day. My easy day is Sunday. I say to you, if your easy day is still running, but taking an easy run, to me, that's not a good recovery day. Why? Because certain exercises put stress on certain parts of your body. So running puts stress on your tendons, your ligaments, that type of thing. What I would recommend for the recovery day is doing something totally different, gentle, some gentle movement. Walking, I guess, would be okay, but not a slow run. You're still kind of pounding on the ligaments there. So maybe some, easy swimming, some light stretching, or get a massage or whatever, meditation, but you need that recovery period. So yes, it's good to train hard and do the forced exercise for Parkinson's. It'll generate Bdnf. You force yourself, if you're doing agility exercises, to rewire and have new skills. But please don't forget to every now and then you want to take, for those who are the type A's, you want to let your muscles and your body and your brain adapt to everything you've learned, everything you've pushed your musculoskeletal system and cardio system to do. You want to give your body a chance to adapt in a unstressed way, so to speak.
You don't want to get injured, right?
Yeah.
So originally I had to do a hard stop at 11. My appointment moved slightly. I've got maybe about 11:10 I should cut off for sure.
Okay.
You
got one?
I don't really want to talk about these in detail. I just want to mention them. People are uniquely affected differently by Parkinson's. This is true. Some people never get a tremor. Let's see. Postural instability statistically tends to be a later stage symptom. I know some people who it's the first thing they experience. No tremor. no bradykinesia, no akinesia, no rigidity. I'm thinking of one lady in particular, 87, 88 years old now. Boom, she can jump up from the floor, she can go, she can do things. She'll fall down. Postural instability has caused her some great problems. So with her, we're using a lot of mindful movement to make sure she doesn't explode into these movements. Breathing issues are common in people with PD. True, statistically. That's all I have right now. I just wanted to mention those. We don't need to talk about them. We could talk about them maybe in part 2 of this type of topic. Let's go like another 5-6 minutes. What you got on your end?
A couple more related to medication. There's the myth out there that if you start levodopa medication too early, that you're you'll end up progressing the disease faster because you're delaying. The thought is delaying it will push you out further as far as hitting that period where the medication might not be working as well for you, where you have to take so much medication that you get dyskinesia. That's false. That's a myth. Especially if you're having trouble moving.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'm going to say that if you follow the work and research of Dr. Anthony Lang, who's a genius. I got to meet him once. It was great. He's at Toronto Western Hospital. He's one of the top dogs in the neuro world. His research shows absolutely, you are correct. It's a myth. Starting medications too early will cause the lack of effectiveness later. So just wanted to support what you said there. Go ahead. I interrupted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you're not moving well, you have really severe symptoms. You could think of dopamine as like a supplement and you have a deficiency of it. So you don't want to starve yourself and make yourself feel miserable. If your dopamine is low, you're going to be depressed. You're not going to be moving as well. So if you can't boost that enough with exercise, use the two of them together. If you if you bring the dopamine up to a level where you can move well, then you'll be able to exercise even harder and possibly even have to, at some point reduce medication. I know that's my next goal. I want to try to, now that I got the second hip done, hopefully I'll have a streak now. I'm looking for a streak of more than two years in a row without a road bump, without a bump in the road or a pothole. Because I was diagnosed in 2016, then I got a hip operation in 2017. 2018 was an okay year. 2019, of all the years, I would say 2019 was my favorite as far as my skill level. Like with one of my favorite sports, running. I had a good running year in 2019. Then COVID happened, and I'm doing okay. I'm just still doing okay. Just maybe plateaued a little bit because the hip was bothering me. And then I had I had this 2021 now. I had this hip operation again. So I got a new surge coming up. I'm hoping to. I'm going to try some of this fast walking actually for my cardio, the John Pepper method. I had started it right before my hip started bothering me a lot more, and I had to shut it down. But that's one of the things I'm going to do, and then all the other things that are the balance and agility exercises and all that, and my sports stuff, dancing, of course.
By the way, if anyone is curious about John Pepper, I first learned about him in this book, which has the single best chapter in a book about Parkinson's. Kind of an overall summary, The Brain's Way of Healing. Norman Doidge is the author. Talks about Pepper in there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's do one more. Do you have one more?
Well, I had one quick one related to the medicine, which just something that I've heard people say that related to, like, if you're taking any of the dopaminergic type medicine, they say, my medication doesn't seem to be doing anything, which first of all, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but they say, well, I'm just better off. I'm probably just better off. I don't like medication. I'm probably better off just not taking it. And since it's not doing, quote unquote, doing anything, I should be okay. Don't forget, you're still putting dopamine in your body. So you're unless you're not absorbing it at all, not doing anything doesn't necessarily mean it's not kicking in. It still might be preventing you from having worse problems. Also, it builds up in your system over time. So there's even a certain amount, like if you just stop taking it, there's still some left in your system. So you might find if you stop taking it, you might notice some differences right away, and then you might even see some more differences later on as it flushes out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my point on that is think about what you mean by not doing anything and discuss that with your doctor and find out if that's really really true, that it's not doing anything, not taking any effect. To me, not doing anything would mean you're not absorbing any, you're not synthesizing any dopamine at all from the drug, because if you are absorbing any sort of significant amount, then I don't think you could say it's not doing anything, because it might be preventing you preventing you from having worse symptoms. Things may not be getting better because of it, or nothing has changed, but doesn't mean it's not helping.
Exactly. I want to go back to one thing you talked about earlier with, eating healthy and eating, let's say you're eating everything that's not processed and a lot of plant-based stuff. There are plants with dopamine, so you need to make sure, and I don't know what they are actually, I can't remember, but
Fava beans.
I can find out, which I've talked about before when I interviewed Cynthia Lopez, who's a dietitian in Mexico, soon to be PhD, who works solely with people with Parkinson's as a dietitian. But is it interesting too how some of those foods can affect the medication, including eating certain foods too close to your medications or at the wrong time of day where they can block the effectiveness. So we should save that for another episode. Right now, today's turned into a very, very busy day, which I'm happy for because some great people I get to work with today. So I need to get going in about 1 minute. But I want to say thanks, man, for this idea. This was Russ's idea to do the myths of movement, Parkinson's, myths versus facts. Great idea.
I don't know that we necessarily covered, all the things were myths, but this is kind of like what we wanted to do on this show, where we just kind of start throwing out ideas.
Yeah.
And as long as we're passing along useful information, I guess it's okay.
Exactly. Trying to dispel some of these myths. I think it's really important. And of course, anything like the thing I said about Anthony Lang, there are going to be people who with research that say that he's wrong. You should wait a long, long time and as much as you can before you take medication. Talk to your doctor. I'm not a doctor. Russ isn't a doctor. However, we've buried ourselves into things. Not for nothing. There's a doctor here, a general practitioner, internal medicine, who refers a lot of people to me with, let's say, mild cognitive decline, Parkinson's, other issues. He knows I'm not a doctor, yet even on his radio show he calls me the doctor because he feels I probably know more than a lot of doctors do about Parkinson's. Well, maybe in some ways I do, but I can tell you I don't know what a doctor knows. So we're here to help you, but don't neglect your doctor's advice. If you think your doctor's advice is questionable, get a second opinion. Or a third, or whatever it takes. So thank you, my friend Russ.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to bolt out, meet up with an amazing 90-year-old lady who doesn't have any diagnosis, just wants to keep moving better, and she kicks my butt every time I see her.
Sounds awesome. Awesome and inspirational. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for everything, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Alan, Julia, you're welcome, Julia. Fatima, Laura. Thank you, Laura. Huge inspiration to me. So much.
Thanks everyone for listening in.
Listen, Jose, Karina, and Russ. Thanks, everyone. You and I will talk before next week, like later today. We'll communicate. And everybody else, have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic week. And keep moving.
Have a great one, everyone.
Use your brain. If I was to, I always joke around and say, if I was to summarize my book, which is 480 pages or something, in one paragraph, it's about 15 words or so. Move your body. Use your brain every single day. No exceptions. And do things you like to do. Keep moving. Keep learning. I'll see y'all later, folks.
Bye.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.